You may have heard me say this before, but your messaging and content should not play in the middle. But what you probably haven't heard me say is that when you play in the middle, your content becomes a commodity. What is this and how do you break out of it? Well, that's exactly what we're talking about in this episode. So keep listening. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Cue the music, shoot the confetti in the air. It's a good day. Why is it a good day, you might ask? Well, the Content Revolution just dropped. This is the Content Revolution video series. You may have experienced the Content Revolution video series from our past two launches, but it's nothing like it is this time around. We spent 7 months, or what feels like 7 months. Matt, it's been about 7 months, right? Yeah. It's been a while. 7 months creating this video series. Now, it's out there. I'm going to talk about what it is that it can help you with here in a second. We're going to talk about messaging. We're going to talk about all that good stuff here in a second. But I just want to talk about one thing real quick. This Content Revolution series, even you may have been listening to some of the episodes, you may have of the podcast, you may have heard me talk on some other people's podcasts. Maybe you attended the boot camp. You've seen some of our free content talking about all the elements of messaging. You're going to see it live in action in the video series. Now, this video series is going to blow your mind when it comes to messaging, content, and communication. We've incorporated some stuff in this video series that we haven't ever talked about, like how to speak so people understand what you're saying without requiring them to think. We talk about that inside the Content Revolution video series, but I would say from a videography, cinematic point of view, you definitely want to go check it out because some of those shots are absolutely beautiful. Like Matt and I went off-roading up to 10,000 feet near Mount Whitney to a place called Funnel Lake just to go get some of the shots that we did. I mean, we were like, I just bought a Tacoma TRD Pro and 4-wheel drive, and we were driving through the snow into the forest, just running through, like you couldn't even see the trail. You're just like, it looks like you're driving through the middle of the forest just to get up there to get some of these shots. But not only that, but every single shot, it's a 5-part video series. Each video is roughly 15 minutes long, but every paragraph and every scene was broken down by scene to location to angles to lenses. I mean, we went all out inside of this video series. So from a cinematic point of view, you definitely want to go see the work of Matt and Jackie, who put all this together. You'll experience the messaging magic from me and a little bit of Taylor as well. She helped script parts of it. And you'll see all the messaging elements. So there's so many different ways to have an amazing experience with this video series that I encourage all of you guys to go check it out. I'm very proud of it. I think I'm going to have to say this is probably the biggest and most proud I've ever been about anything that our company's ever put out. And I think what's amazing about it is that it was 100% a team effort, and to see 5 or 6 people come together to create something like this is something I'm extremely proud of. But with that being said, here's some of the things that we're going to talk about, which I'm going to talk about today as well for you, is when it comes to messaging. Like, what are you going to learn inside this video series? You're going to learn how to craft the message. What are those elements? How do we put it into content? How do we start to structure the titles of our content? How do we communicate in a way that plays into the subconscious mind? But more importantly, what I want you to grasp and what I want you to pay attention to before you watch this video series is really pay attention to the problems with content right now. The problems with messaging right now. And you may have heard me say it before. I'm going to say it again. One of the biggest problems is that you just blend in. A lot of the advice that we get when it comes to content and when it comes to messaging is outdated, meaning that 5 to 10 years ago, there were certain things that worked because there wasn't a lot of competition. You didn't blend in. You could talk about anything you wanted to do, and you were automatically labeled as the expert because there wasn't a lot of experts. So, for example, I used to teach YouTube SEO and how to rank videos. When I did it, I literally had like 1 or 2 competitors. That was about it. I think James Wedmore was a competitor, and there's like one other person. There was no one out there talking about what we were talking about. So it's very easy to gain traction. And now you go look at YouTube experts, there's hundreds of them. So the way that I grew a business and grew an audience back then, this was maybe 5 years ago, is completely different. But the problem is the advice that the gurus are giving us are still the same, because that's what they did. That's what they did 5 years ago to gain their following. So they're teaching you that. And although it's still relevant and maybe could still work, it might work for the 1% while it doesn't work for the 99% anymore. Meaning that, yeah, if we focus on how-to keywords and surveying our audience and trying to like rank our videos on top of YouTube and stuff like that, like only one person can get ranked at the top of YouTube. But there might be hundreds of people trying to get there. So yeah, their advice might work for some people, but it doesn't work for everyone. And so what we want to do is we want to start to shift the way we communicate. We want to start shifting the way we handle content. And that's what the video series is here to do. But I want to talk about this concept of playing in the middle. And I think so many people get stuck playing in the middle with their messaging. And what I mean by this is that they try to do and say everything that's going to attract as many people as possible. And we all heard the cliche saying, when you speak to everyone, you speak to no one. And it's true. But I want to go a little bit beyond that. I want to go a little bit deeper than that. What does that mean? What does playing in the middle mean? What do they mean, speak to everyone? And what I mean by this is I think a lot of people forget who they are. I think a lot of people get concerned about what other people are going to think when they say something. And I'm willing to bet a lot of you that don't feel fully aligned with your message or something's off. There are things that you want to say inside of your business that you have not said yet because you're worried about what your audience is going to think, or you're worried about what someone else is going to think, or you're worried about this, you're worried about that, or you know that there's something else you want to be doing, but you've been making money doing something that you kind of now resent. And you don't want to give that up because you don't want to walk off the cliff and push this thing away, but you know you're not fully aligned. But when we get fully aligned, then that's when the magic starts to happen. And I think people play in the middle because they forget who they are. And what I mean by that is, who are you on the soul level? What is your purpose here? Not what the world has told you to be. And that's what we have to do, is we have to go and we have to look at who were we before the world told us who to be. And so if you're dictating your content and your topics based off of fear and worry of what other people are going to think, things you've already done that you've seen success with, and you know there's a deeper message, you're not remembering who you are on the core level. And so we start to play in the middle because we're going to say this thing over here that Susie's not going to get mad at, or we're going to say this thing over here that's going to avoid the haters, and we're going to do blah, 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 blah. When the real magic is remembering who you are and playing on the edges of who you are and taking a stand for something. And ironically, that's the thing that brings business growth. And most people don't recognize that. They play safe in the middle and they're like, why is no one paying attention to me? Because you're saying the same crap that everyone else is saying. When you're an expert and you're teaching SEO, and I'm going to keep using that example because that's who I was. And I'll just kind of tell my story. So playing in the middle would be, let me talk about this tutorial. Let me give you more information. Let me just give you a step-by-step blah, 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 blah on how to rank a video, how to title a video, how to do all that stuff. To me, that stopped becoming meaningful. I think that was, for me, that was a great part of my journey. That was something I had to go through to learn and figure out how to build a business. It was part of my journey, but my soul, my purpose started to evolve, and I wasn't fulfilled by that work as nearly as much as I used to be. And back then I could get away with playing in the middle because the middle was safe. The middle was like, let me just give you a bunch of tutorials, but I'm never going to talk about who I am as a person. I'm never going to talk about the things that I believe that are related to business, or I'm not going to talk about why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I didn't want to offend people. I didn't want to piss people off. And I think the reason why so many people play in the middle is because they're worried about pissing people off, or they're worried about excluding certain people. But here's the thing that I hope all of you are going to grasp from this episode, is that you're not saying something that's going to piss people off. You're saying something that's going to support beliefs that some people already have. You're reinforcing people's identities. You're saying things that are going to show them that they're not only accepted for who they are, but they can thrive because of who they are. So for example, if I said entrepreneurs are the people that create the most change in the world, someone who's creating change in the world through a corporate job, probably isn't going to agree with me. And sure, it might piss them off. But what I'm doing is by saying entrepreneurs are the ones that create the most change in the world, is I'm resonating with the entrepreneurs of the world who are trying to create change on the deepest level possible, beliefs. And I do believe that to be true. I do believe that entrepreneurs of the world cause the most amount of change. And it's our duty to create that change. And I'm going to go out and say that, and I'm going to go on a limb. Why? Because it's one, it's what I believe in, and two, it's what I want to stand for. Three, I know it's going to connect with entrepreneurs. And four, I know it's going to repel people in corporate because they're not the ones who are going to buy the programs and not the people that I want to work with. Maybe someone who's in corporate trying to be an entrepreneur, but people that are like stuck on a 9-to-5 job and this is what I want to do and this is the change. That's not my audience. There's nothing wrong with them. They're not wrong. They're not bad. It's just, I'm just choosing who I want to work with. And I can start to craft a message that doesn't play in the middle. And a lot of you that are having problems with content messaging, you play in the middle. And when we play in the middle, we tend to do a lot of tutorials. We start to do a lot of information products and stuff like that. And remember, there's ways to play on the edges that is not aggressive, that is not telling someone they're doing something wrong, that is not pushing other people down. In fact, that's the opposite of what we want to do. We want to identify, here's who I am, let me attract people because of who I am and help them. And if they don't resonate with me, then there's nothing wrong with them. I'm not saying they're wrong. What I'm saying is they should go find someone else who they better suit with, who they vibe better with. That's all that's going on, right? And on the boot camp today, there's a perfect example where, Gary Vaynerchuk plays on the edges, but his message and the identity that he goes after is really the hustling entrepreneur. That's the person that he connects with the most. That's the identity he's going after. And he has a lot of beliefs and things that he says about that he knows the hustling entrepreneur will agree with. But at the same time, there's a lot of people who also believe that there's more flow and elegance and you need rest in order to build a successful business, and you need to sit in the silence and things like that. We preach a lot of that. Now, neither of them are right or wrong, right? Like, you're going to find a lot of people that do need the rest and that do like the rest and do want to sit in silence. And then you're going to see a lot of people that do hustle and see success. No one's right, no one's wrong. But the thing is there's a space for everyone. If you're the person who thinks the opposite of Gary, it doesn't mean Gary's wrong or bad and you don't want to say that he's wrong or bad. All you need to do is just say the things that you stand for and play on that edge. And all the people that don't resonate with Gary will come over and resonate with you because of who you are and the things that you believe. And I think there's so many people that just go like, well, if I say this, it means I'm automatically saying no to this, or I'm saying the opposite of that, or I'm saying that's wrong. And no, you're not doing any of that. I don't want you to do any of that. What other people are doing have nothing to do with what you're doing and what you're saying and what you believe. It's all about standing up for what you believe in, incorporating education into it, shifting people's perspective, and attracting the tribe that fits that mold, and loving everyone else that doesn't fit the mold, but just knowing that there's someone else out there for them and that person isn't you. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, all the biggest leaders out there have been doing that with their best-selling books and their talking from stage and all that stuff. This stuff I'm talking about has been around for a really long time. It just hasn't been brought down to the online marketing space. It hasn't been brought down to online content. And that's what we're doing. Okay. So what starts to happen is when we play in the middle, a couple examples of people that have not played in the middle. Gary Vee is one of them. So Gary Vee very much plays on the edges of that hustling entrepreneur. He very much talks about the things he believes about business, and he's built a massive following because of it. Takes a stand on his stuff. He doesn't survey his audience and ask them what they need more of and different things like that. He talks about what he wants to talk about. Another one that does not play in the middle. I love using this example, but it's the Pink Jeep Tours in Sedona. They're a local-based business, and all their Jeeps are painted pink. You go to Sedona, it is literally impossible to not see a pink Jeep. And what they did is they created a company called Pink Jeep Tours, and they painted every single one of their Jeeps pink. And they're the number one tour company in Sedona, Arizona. Now, their message, they didn't really have this, message per se, like online content. Theirs is more of a real life example of they just didn't play in the middle with their branding. Everything is pink. And a lot of people go like, well, pink's going to make men not want to go, or it's going to appeal more to women. It's like, no, it just stands out more. It just, they grab the attention because they're not playing in the middle with their branding. And they're the number one Jeep tour because of it, because it stands out. Everyone wants to go on the Jeep Pink Tour. They see everyone every day. You'll see these pink Jeeps loaded up with people, taking them on these amazing tours. And people go, I want to do that. How do I look it up? How do I know? And all they need to do is just go to Google and type in tour in Sedona and then see pink Jeep. And they're like, oh, that's the pink Jeep thing. That's the one I saw. That's another example. Matt was telling me earlier before this podcast about someone, real estate agent named Meet Kevin. And he talks about real estate investing in a way that other people aren't talking about. In fact, he'll say, and he'll find out certain examples of like, hey, so-and-so said this is the only way to go about investing. And I'm going to show you guys how that's not the only way. Let me show you a different perspective. Let me show you a different way to do it. And so what he's doing is he's standing out because he's going against the traditional real estate advice, but it's all stuff that makes a lot of sense. He's going against the grain. And, kind of an example of this would be when we bought our house here. You hear from so many people that you need to put 20% down on a house because you don't want that insurance. You don't want the PMI. So if you don't put 20% down on a house, there's insurance that is called PMI insurance, or PMI, it's something insurance. And you're going to have to pay basically a fee every single month until you hit that 20% level. I didn't want to put 20% down. I'd rather have the cash in hand. So I don't remember how much we put down, maybe 15% or something like that. But I didn't want to put that much money down because I'd rather have the cash in hand, because me having cash in hand would make me more money than what the PMI was gonna cost. And so our PMI is like $100 a month. But here's what happened when we bought our house. The value in our home has gone up over $200,000 in the last 18 months. Yes, the market's crazy and certain things like that. But let's just say in a normal market, it's gone up, $40,000. Well, that $40,000 we made in equity would greatly outweigh the $99 a month we were paying in PMI. That's the advice you hear from so many people. And that advice sometimes is so backwards. And so, what Meet Kevin does is he finds these little things like that and does things differently to show you how to build wealth, get into real estate, to do all of this stuff. And that's what happens inside of a lot of people's spaces. A lot of people's spaces, there's a lot of structures. And what I mean by structures is there's a lot of experts teaching something. And when enough authorities start teaching something a certain way, people just assume, the subconscious mind just assumes that that's the way it's supposed to be done. And I call that a structure. A structure is something that's driven into the subconscious mind as a normal, as a truth, as a way of doing things. And for the mind, the subconscious mind, in order to save energy, glucose, it just automates as many things as it can, so we don't have to think about all these decisions all day. We save energy. But the subconscious mind creates so many different types of structures inside of our heads. And so what happens is the same thing happens in your industry. What happens is that your industry is filled with structure. And what playing on the edges can do is allow you to break apart those structures that your industry has created to give them a better way of doing things, or a different way. For example, had I just listened to the advice of you need 20% because you don't want PMI, blah, 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 don't buy that house, we would have literally lost out on $200,000 of equity we made in the house. It would have been a stupid financial decision. But what happens is 99% of the real estate investors out there, or people talking about this stuff, will tell you you don't want PMI because they have a different perspective. What Meet Kevin does is gives people a different perspective. And so what we want to do is look at inside of your space, what are those structures? What are the things that have been created that people just assume are normal? What's a different perspective you can give on things? Again, we're not saying the other advice is wrong or it's bad, but we're just saying, here's a different perspective. Here's something that hasn't really been talked about, but is how I'm doing things. This is my viewpoint on it. This is our better way of doing things. Here's how we've made more money or better, lost more weight or done whatever, doing things a little bit different. And because we're teaching different, we're talking differently, we play on the edges. We stand out a little bit more. And what happens is a lot of people will teach from the knowledge phase. They'll just regurgitate information and teach the same thing that they've heard. Even though they haven't done it themselves, they just teach the same thing over and over and over again, and they blend in because it's the same thing that 90% of people are saying. And like Meet Kevin, for example, he's teaching from experience. He's teaching from the knowing. He's not just taking a basic real estate course and then regurgitating information on YouTube. He's teaching from the knowing, giving people a different perspective, talking differently about things people haven't heard before. It's creating contrast. And when there's 1.5 million people putting out content, we want the contrast, but it also needs to make sense. And what happens if you don't do that? Your content becomes a commodity. And what I mean by that is it becomes something that everyone else is offering. So when I was a YouTube expert and I was teaching YouTube marketing, was great because I was the only person teaching YouTube. And I was known as a YouTube expert. I was known for that platform. But what happens is that when more and more experts start teaching YouTube, there's only so many steps you need to know when you're ranking videos on YouTube. Like, after a while, everyone's course is essentially the same. So when everyone else has the course, or let's just put it this way, yes, the courses might have been a little bit different, but the audience perceived the courses as the same thing. They perceived them as YouTube ranking courses. Sure, they weren't looking at my steps compared to someone else's steps and going, okay, I guess this one's a little bit different. No, it's the way they perceive it. They perceive it as the same thing. They know, I want to get to this end goal. I want this result. All these courses are doing the same thing. And what happens is you become a commodity. And when you become a commodity, usually the only way to get the sale is by lowering your price. And I think it was James Wedmore I heard describe it in this way, which is like you own a banana stand selling bananas and you're selling them for $1. Someone else comes next to you and is selling the same bananas, but for 75 cents. Like, why would anyone buy the $1? Why would anyone buy the banana for $1? It doesn't make any sense. They're going to go buy the one for 75 cents. Then you just get into a war of who can charge the smaller price. And that's what happens with content. If I would have just kept doing the SEO thing, I would have to figure out a way to make my SEO course better. And of course, there's things you can do by people will pay more if they connect with someone a little bit more. They'll pay more if they trust someone a little bit more. They'll pay someone more if you can make your product stand out more, if you describe it in a unique way, you teach it in a unique way. Again, this is all the stuff we talk about with messaging, which is like taking a stand. It's all about dropping beliefs and identities. So there's ways we can make it not a commodity, but that's what starts to happen when we play in the middle and people don't understand that. They don't realize all of that stuff. They don't realize that you have certain beliefs or certain identities that you guys can connect on, or certain reasons why they should trust you more. You become a banana. You become a commodity. So going back to the banana example, well, what if you started talking, you got organic bananas and you charged a little bit more because they were organic? That's one way to stand out. That's one way to be a little bit more unique. What if you made the selling experience like more fun? People knew you as like the jokester and you made them laugh while they're buying bananas and you created a fun little experience for them. They'll probably pay more for that, right? So we've got to figure out ways to take our stuff and move it out of the commodity phase. So it's not a commodity anymore and it's in our own space. And that happens by playing on the edges. It's about not playing in the middle anymore. It's about being okay not being liked by everyone, by not speaking to everyone, but by saying, this is who I am, this is what I believe, this is what I teach. I'm going to thrive because of that, because when we get to that place, we're in true authenticity of who we are. We're in full personal power of who we are. And we connect with people more, we help them more, we serve them more because of who we are. You have to remember who you are, incorporate that in your message, and stop playing on the edges. Now, there's one thing that we haven't talked about yet, which we're going to do in our next episode. So this is a two-part episode here. We're going to talk about how do we start crafting some of this stuff, but also how do we do it so we can make more sales without a ton of followers as well? Because that's the whole thing. Today we talked about how do we start to craft that message. Number 2 is, well, how do we make more sales because of it? Because look, guys, there's a ton of influencers that have no sales and no business around what they do. They have a ton of followers, but no business. And we, on the other hand, have 7,000 Instagram fans, but a multi-million-dollar business. Why? Why is that? Because fans and followers do not equal sales. And we're going to talk about that on the next episode here. But what I want you to do is to head over to the Content Revolution Facebook group, go in there, watch the video series today, because it just dropped today. And I want you to start piecing a lot of this stuff together, and then get ready for part number 2, where we're going to talk about, like, okay, great. You're starting to see how to separate yourself, how you're unique. How does it translate into sales? How do we get a message and connect it to our offer? And that's going to be on the next part. So here's what I want you to do. Head over to the Content Revolution, post in the Facebook group. Let me know what you think about it. And we'll see you guys on the next episode, which will be in a few days, I believe. So head over there, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.